Hello and welcome to Nerdicky for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerds Dave, and today I'm hanging out with Zach Goins. As always, folks, down in the description, you can find links to find Zach across the interwebs. I should ask you how to pronounce your last name before we started, but here we go. You
You're
can
perfect.
introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you for people that you're new to.
Absolutely. Hey, my name is Zach. I am the creative director at a little company called World of Game Design. We do a lot of 5e Morkborg Mothership publishing under our own banner, and then we also work with clients to help them publish their stuff. Big part of my role in the company as creative director is to help our internal lines run smoothly and get done and over the finish line. But also, we work with literally dozens of different creators to put their projects over the finish line on Kickstarter. And so at this point, we've done like, I don't know, 35, 36 Kickstarters that have been successful across a wide variety of different RPG systems and companies. And every day I'm working with those creators, helping them realize their vision and communicate it well to the masses.
So, am I going out on a limb to say you didn't get into like the industry to help creators do Kickstarters?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That was not like the dream
Yeah.
concept that I started with. No, I
So, so like I guess let's start with like how did you get into the industry? How did you get started? And then what kind of led you guys to Kickstarter and helping others kind of bring their vision to life?
yeah, okay. So it's I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was running a bunch of D&D at different conventions with Adventures League. Kind of that was my jam. I really loved doing it. And I had an insurance job, regular, what do we say, a muggle job like
A muggle
everybody
job,
else.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then we moved. My wife got a job out of town, and we were going to move anyways. And right about the time we were moving, I got obsessed with backing Kickstarters. I loved going to conventions and seeing all the cool products that all these indie publishers and third party creators and yada yada were doing. And I got obsessed with Kickstarter and uh, was like, oh man, I see this as a really great place. It's really supportive. It's a really supportive community, and a lot of interesting things are happening. I had started to dip my toe in the DMs Guild and just didn't quite feel like that was the right fit for me. So I grabbed a couple buddies and I said, let's make a book and put it on Kickstarter. Let's just for fun. Let's just do it because everybody else does it and I love it. And so
What was that book? What was the first book?
it was called Captain Heartchild's Guide to Oceanic Depths. It was a 5e book, and Saltmarsh had just came out, if I remember correctly. And we had been so pumped for Saltmarsh because we were ignorant. And we thought that it was going to be a book all about like oceans and seas and water-based adventures and underwater-based adventures. And we thought that would be
Yeah.
really cool. And then it really wasn't that. It was an island hopper, which is cool.
Then you
Um,
learned, wait a minute, marshes are actually more like swamps.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's why I say I'm ignorant. I should have thought for 2 seconds. Um, but that idea of like, oh, we want to do a lot of things with the water and with oceans. And so we made the book we wanted to see, and we took it to Kickstarter. It did well, quote unquote. We made the money that we needed to make. We made a 120-page book that I'm really proud of as our first book still. Um, just a couple of yahoos, figuring it out. Nobody holding our hand through it. We made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of lessons, but delivered. And then, like I said, as all of this is happening, I'm also moving, right?
Yeah.
And so we uh get to this other town, and I have the option of going, I need to go find a job, right? Um, I said, well, I just did this Kickstarter and it made whatever, 6 grand. And I'm like, what if I just tried to do that? What if that was my job? And my wife, God bless her, she's amazing, was like, sure, go give it a shot. No time like the present. Let's let you have that chance and see what happens. And that kicked it off. And it was desperate for a year and a half of just like tried to do projects, trying to like throw as much spaghetti at the wall like
Was the
crayons.
first book a physical book or
Oh
straight
yeah,
digital? Yeah.
physical. Like, I mean, I did everything wrong, right? Like everything that I would warn people against,
Yeah.
I I did. Like it was physical. He had like 12 different contributors to it, which all actually turned in great stuff, but holy crap, I would never recommend somebody starting off by trying to wrangle 12 people.
Yeah.
Um we had it printed locally, which was we didn't know any better. Like I didn't even have the concept of like ordering from overseas or
Yeah.
even like I I probably knew that I could go online and like find
Oh man,
a
you guys must
book
have paid
printer.
like $20 a book.
I think we ended up getting like in retrospect, looking back at it,
Hmm.
we paid I'll tell you, I think we paid like $12 a book. It was a soft cover, whatever, right?
Yeah.
We could have got it cheaper elsewhere, but in our minds, we had already done the budget.
Yeah.
We already whatever, and like it worked. So we were able to buy this book at our like literally in our little podunk 30,000 person town
Yeah.
at a print house that literally couldn't even laminate the cover. They had to ship the book down to Tulsa after
Uh,
they had printed it to get the covers laminated and then shipped back to them so they could finish the process. Um, but it worked and
yeah.
it was amazing. Yeah, but anyhow, so it was a year and a half of desperation and not making a lot of money, and I still don't make a lot of money, by the way. But
No, honestly, like we were just talking because you mentioned Muggle job. I
yep.
actually, after doing Nerdarchy 5 years full time, had to get back and get a regular job,
Hmm.
and I make way more than my regular job than I ever did in Nerdarchy. Yeah, but it was kind of a labor of love.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So I guess the last piece of that story of our story is that about a year and a half ago, I met someone. I was doing some freelancing at the time and picked up some freelancing work for a guy named Jared Nielsen. Um, he had an idea for a Mayan setting source book and adventure path and things like that. And he needed some help. And so I jumped in and wrote on that project. And we found that we really liked working together. He had a lot of skills that I didn't have. I had a few skills that he didn't have. And so at the end of that project, we kind of looked around and said, why would we part ways? Like
Yeah.
let's figure out a way to combine forces. We did, and things have gotten better ever since. Now we have like 8 people that work with us really closely. And we do a bunch of projects, and this gets to be my full-time job, and I'm no longer desperate in that sense.
So we got a question in the chat. I'll grab real quick. Winter Weaver, are you guys able to assist with artwork for projects? I'm in the testing stages for my system and aiming to publish soon, but right now the system is just pages and pages of text.
Yeah, okay. Well, we could talk about that. Absolutely. We really strive to be a company that when we take on a client, we want to do all the stuff that you don't want to do. And we want to get away, stay out of the way if you want to mess with it. So if you're a client of ours or you come to us and you say, "Hey, I don't want to muck with art," we're happy to go look and help source out an artist or two or six that you feel like would be a good fit for your project and kind of help bring that side of it to life, if that's what you want. So absolutely, yeah, we can definitely help with the art side.
Yeah, I think art directing is one of my least favorite jobs for producing a product. One, I feel like it's its own skill set. It's kind of fun to do, but I've been fortunate to work with really talented artists that were very forgiving for my ignorance and inability, who were still able to take what I gave them and make something gorgeous come to life.
Yeah.
Because I feel like directing people, and also I hate being like, I hate this, send it back, So, and I feel like being a little bit of a jerk helps in probably that field.
Yeah, you and me both. Like I love art, and I have at this point a lot of great friends and acquaintances that are artists, and that's a really fun part of it for me is like seeing
Yeah,
them like put the illustrations next to my text to be like, oh, it looks so good now.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm not an artist, and so I luckily I'm fortunate enough to have other people on the team who can kind of help steer that ship and make sure that we're cranking out good stuff. So
It was fun to doing the art directing and taking the art that came back and dropping it into a chat or an email with the lead designer without any text or words whatsoever, just to get their reaction, and for them to be
yeah,
like, "Oh, this is that," and
yeah,
their excitement is seeing like something that they verbalized into being, or wrote into being, get illustrated, and then
yeah,
just be able to look at that illustration and know what it is.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. There's no better feeling to a non-artist than to see art for the thing that they thought of.
Yeah. So you mentioned you guys have done like 35 Kickstarter successfully.
Yeah.
So what about the stinkers, and what did you learn from those experiences?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there's definitely been a couple, three, four stinkers in that batch, right? Like, and that's, there's the mantra of you learn best from failing, right? Um, and I hope that that's true for us, that we learned a lot when we fail. And I think so. I'll give you a couple cases of failure and what we learned, but I think that there's different levels of failure on Kickstarter, right? Like there's the failure, obviously, of like you don't fund, but then there's also the failure of you fund, but then due to situation X, you are unable to deliver in the time frame or the whatever the product that you promised, right?
Yeah.
Which is hopefully a lesser failure because hopefully you're still at least delivering, but it's still a failure to a backer to say we believe that you're gonna get your book in May and it takes till October, right? Um, so let's see. One of our first failure, and we haven't had a lot, but our first failure was one that I really had the idea with my partner at the time. This was before World of Game Design, but we had the idea of doing a magazine, like a quarterly magazine of 5e content. And what we really wanted to do was reach out to a bunch of third-party creators and get them to send us like previews of their settings or their adventures or whatever, or write up articles for their stuff. We wanted them to give us content that promoted their IPs and their runs, but still was content, right? Give us a monster stat block from your bestiary or whatnot, and we'll print it and we'll promote you. And I think the idea was cool, and I would love to have a magazine like that. But we had the idea, we had a narrow window that was coming up that we could launch a project in, and so within like 2 weeks we threw some art together, threw the idea around, grabbed a couple of creator friends of ours that were making third party content to get them on board, and threw it on Kickstarter. And it just didn't do well. Like it didn't get traction. And I really think that the lesson that we found there was like maybe it was a good idea. I'm not sure on that side still, but um, definitely we hadn't put in the time, laid the foundations in the right way to really set ourselves up for success. We didn't have a lot of followers ahead of it on the project. We hadn't done the work of getting a bunch of, that project could have been a lot different if we'd have had a dozen, you know, companies on board from the get-go that were all pushing towards it and saying, we're going to contribute and you should go check this out, or however. And then on the Kickstarter side, like we had a really cool cover graphic for our first book, but we didn't have any of the content for the inside because we're
Yeah.
like, well, we'll get that from other folks and whatever. We should have had something to show backers because backers need, they need to get the vision alongside you, and they probably need more than what you need. And so
You need to
big
be able to
lesson.
pull them into your head somehow.
Exactly, exactly. And we, it was a lot of excitement, and maybe it was a good idea, but it was a good idea that was poorly executed because we didn't lay the foundations right. Um, so I would definitely give that as a nod. It's super important. Like the pre-build of a Kickstarter is the most important time. Pre-launch up until and those first 2 days determine the project's success. Everything else is just proving out that you did your work ahead of time. Um, and then like I guess on the other side of things, like we're still learning, and I think you learn and then you have to evolve, because we live in a world that is on fire. um, and so when we talk about what about those projects that fund and are successful in that light, but fail in other respects or that fall short, um, that's about managing your own expectations and being realistic with your promises, but then also trying to say, even at being realistic, I'm going to under promise even further. So if you think oh, we can definitely deliver in October, go ahead and just say December or January for when you're going to deliver, right? Because things happen. And I don't think that many creators go to Kickstarter promising a date or promising a product that they're confident they can't deliver. But I think it we always want to put our best foot forward, and we always want to sell, right? We're salesmen and we're marketing when we say all these things on that platform. But the reality is that backers are investors and they're owed truth and they're owed transparency. And so in that respect, sometimes during your campaign, you need to put the marketing and the hype aside and you need to be super realistic with what the risks are and what backers are looking at when they come on board. What are they putting their money on and what can they really expect? Um, a company that comes to mind that I very much admire and give a lot of nods to, and I love their content is Onyx Path. And Onyx Path, like they did a Kickstarter last year and said that they weren't going to deliver it till 2024 for a 5e, right?
Yeah.
And in the time you're like, what? That's crazy. Like that's so long. But if you talk to them, they're like, look, the reality is that we are in no control of printing right now and shipping books overseas or what, like we have no control over that. And so what we would rather do is way over project time and deliver ahead of schedule
Well,
than, yeah, go ahead.
as soon as you started mentioning that stuff, my mind went to the first Matt Colville Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I believe his delivery date was 2 years out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And he still fell behind, right? Like he was unfortunate enough to do a Kickstarter at the beginning of the pandemic,
it
and then just the pandemic hit and shipping gets insane and
hasn't
everything goes
gotten too
crazy.
much better.
No,
So
yeah, and yeah, God bless them. Like I'm not, these
yeah,
people are trying. I say these people are trying. I believe most of them are really earnestly trying, and we just live in a world that is nuts. But you can learn lessons from that, right? And I think Onyx Path did a great job of they learned the lesson of we don't want to fall behind. So we're gonna push out the date. And if that loses us some backers because they don't want to wait, quote unquote, 2 years for their book,
yeah,
we would rather lose 10% of our backers, but make everybody happy that is a backer than to promise a much earlier date, miss it, and have 25% of our community frustrated.
yeah. It is tough, and also like a lot of Kickstarters are people doing it for the first time, right? So like maybe they've never produced a physical product before and now they're going to do it and they're like, this sounds like a good thing. And also, like, when you're talking to people to get projections and figure out timetables, well, at the end of the day, you're probably talking to a bunch of salespeople. And guess what? Salespeople lie all the time just to get the
Yeah.
sale, right?
Oh my
So, like,
gosh.
yeah, if you're using that as your guidance, right, you're right from the beginning, the premise is a bit off.
And what else are you going to use as your premise if
Yeah,
you're a new creator, right? Like
yeah,
if you call up a book printer and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can have it to you in 3 weeks." That's the only info you have to work with. And maybe you say, "Okay, well they said 3 weeks. I'll say 5 just to be
yeah,
safe." Listen, I've done that before. I
yeah,
did that in the last year. And then you turn around and it's been 2 months since they said, and they still haven't printed. You're like, well, this doesn't feel like 3 weeks. That's a learning experience, right?
yeah. So, do
You're
you
absolutely
have
right.
a formula or a method for when you're laying down the the foundation of like this is how many backers I want to see subscribe to the project before it goes live? If I'm not asking for trade secrets here or whatever.
No, you're fine.
Uh,
I love talking about this stuff and a big goal. Like one of the things that I love doing is, we get folks reaching out pretty regularly saying, hey, I'm interested in talking to you at least about helping with the project. And so I get on a call with them like you and I are talking right now, and we just chat for like an hour because I love helping as best I can, even if we don't work together, but I also just love hearing people's ideas and getting excited for them. But so to answer your question, yeah, I what I was told early on by another super helpful, well, a friend of ours, Andy Hand with Limitless Adventures, is that a lot of Kickstarters get about a third of their funding in the first 2 days, and a third of their funding in the middle, and then a third of the funding in the last 2 days. Um, and that by and large proves true. There are definitely variations.
Yeah, unless you have a blowout Kickstarter, that's fairly
If
accurate.
if you have a big name elsewhere, if you're Matt Colville,
Yeah.
right, you're going to get a larger portion of your audience up front because they're not coming to that project. People didn't buy Strongholds and Followers because Strongholds and Followers was super amazing and the coolest third party supplement they'd ever heard of. They bought it because Matt Colville's amazing and they love him and they want to support him. And so no matter what book he put out for that first book, they were going to support it. Um, and that's great. Um, but anyhow, so I kind of took that initial statement that Andy gave me and I started working backwards off of it. And I started paying attention to when we build up followers pre-live, how many of those followers convert to backers and how many of those backers pledge at certain levels and within the first couple days. And then, okay, does that prove true then? So if we have 500 backers and that converts to 200 backer or 500 followers, maybe that converts to 200 backers in the first 2 days. Well, 200 backers at the first 2 days, if the average pledge is $50, right, is, I'm going to ruin myself with math here, but like $10,000, we'll say,
Yeah.
whatever it
So
is.
far, the math checks out with me. We're good
Okay,
so
good.
far.
That makes me happy. So, okay, so all right, so I could expect to have $10,000 in the first 2 days. That probably means I'm going to end somewhere around 30,000 at the end. You can kind of project out, and it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's probably going to be accurate within a degree of like 20%. And so if you do that enough times, you can eventually know, even before the Kickstarter goes live, if is this project going to be successful? And at what level is it going to be successful? And as long as you present well on the page and you don't give backers disappointment or surprises that they don't like when the project goes live, like let's say you say, hey, we're going to do this book and it looks amazing and you got this cool, beautiful, gorgeous cover art that you're showing on your banner, and then the project goes live and the other's that gorgeous cover art, but all the rest of the book is black and white interior with not a lot of art, and the book is $60. Well, you're probably not going to have the same metrics because you previewed something, people got excited for something, and then you actually are giving them something different in the live project. But as long as you're communicating a banner and a that pre-launch is communicating accurately, I feel like you can do the math, and it typically turns out um, the way you expected it to.
So our Kickstarter ran a little bit differently, and like I used that same kind of like formula. Like we didn't really do much pre-planning back then, but like we happened to have a bigger budget for the first Kickstarter than we did for the second one.
Uh-huh.
So like I had planned all of my marketing from week 2 to 4,
Mm-hmm.
and skipped the first week basically,
Uh-huh.
based off of, and also like we launched on the quote unquote wrong day, which was a Monday. We at 6 a.m. in the morning, and it was a little slow, but it did like back in the first 48 hours. But like the Kickstarter did something that a lot of them don't, and it just stayed steady throughout the
Yes.
whole entire thing. Only
Yes.
because, and I felt like that was because we had the budget at the time to just tweak the marketing, after the first week, when you're going, in that middle period where they say you're going to have the lull.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Sometimes a project catches fire, right? And
Uh,
catches fire can be relative to the scale of the project and all that, but like a project that catches fire is a project that doesn't have that lull in the middle, right? And continues that tick, 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 tick. And I think sometimes what it is you've got a great page and you're doing great marketing. And so everybody that wanders in is backing. And that is a great feeling. Sometimes what it is you're improving your project as you go along. Like your stretch goals are that you're unlocking are actually interesting to folks, and you're actually converting people because your value is improving as you move. Sometimes it catches fire because you happened upon a topic, a genre, an idea that actually really connects with the community in a major way. And I'll give nod to one of my clients. He had an idea for an assassin themed book for 5e, and that book like had that tick 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 tick, like it just never stopped growing, and it was amazing for him. We blew our projections out of the water with that one. We didn't expect that going in, but he found a corner of the market that was underserved and communicated well to it, and that allowed us to not, you look at the metrics there, that definitely did not hold. The a third didn't
Yeah.
hold true on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of went under the premise that like the other premise I was looking at is most of your backers come from people that never heard of you and from Kickstarter itself. So I was like, well, what can we do to keep Kickstarter interested in our project?
Hmm.
And that was also in my mind as well.
Yeah.
Um,
It's Kickstarter is their algorithms value projects that fund early. Their algorithms value projects that are getting consistent backers. They care a lot about the number of backers on your project, not just
yeah.
the dollar amount, but how many backers are supporting you. And once you hit past a certain area, they start plugging you into places on their website. They start recommending you to different backers. They start when a backer gets an up, backers for another project get an update email. Kickstarter will start to tuck your project at the bottom of that email as like a, hey, this project's doing well and it's tied to something that you also backed. Maybe you want to check it
And
out.
they
And
also
once you
start
get
pushing
that,
marketing at your project.
that's right. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I remember seeing like out of the box encounters, like that's not my ad.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. So it's just like anything, like Amazon's the same way. All these places, like if you're helping them make money, then they're going to promote you, right? So if they think, oh, Dave's got a great thing, then once you've proven that your thing is great, then they're happy to come on board and share in
Yeah.
your success and help make you even greater. But it's up to you to get through that first hump of proving it out.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like backer kits like that too. Like you can work with them for promotion, but they have to believe in you first, or they won't even take you on.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, like I love Backer Kit, and I think that they do a great job of helping. But they definitely are looking, right? Absolutely, they want to see that you put in the time ahead of time. And my guess is that they get a million requests for help every day, and they're looking for the people that are, putting in the time. And that's the biggest difference between Kickstarter creators, I'm going to argue, and people like nothing against them or whatnot. I definitely put stuff on the guild or other places, but like Kickstarter, doing a successful Kickstarter often requires a bunch of work, a bunch of art, a bunch of time spent thinking about how do I sell this? How do I pitch it? What are the risks? What is my budget? What am I going to charge? How can I make a book? All of those questions. Not everybody has that time. Not everybody has those resources. And so, Kickstarter often does a really good job of weeding out people who really just want to pop in, make $50,000 and then figure it out later. um,
Yeah,
uh, to some extent.
I know a lot of
Sometimes,
people like asked us about after our first Kickstarter, and it's like, well, I got bad news for you because really the big thing, like I was like money makes the biggest difference because going into the Kickstarter, we were already at like 5-6 grand in the hole. Right?
yep,
Like, because you're like, oh, well, you need really kick ass cover art. Well, let
yep,
me tell you, kick ass cover art is expensive,
yep.
especially if you hire, one of the top, the higher tier artists.
Hmm.
Um, and then like if you want to budget marketing in, you should, which you kind of need to. And that's the other thing. And unfortunately, those things cost money.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
It's not a cheap thing to get into necessarily, but there's cheap, you can do it cheaply. You just gotta scale down your vision for your first projects.
Uh, Winter Weaver has another question. So,
Yeah.
if I can link backers to my current website with all the rules about, but without the artwork, would that be a good start to show that there is already a lot of work done?
Yeah, absolutely. Like our internal statement for that is like we don't it's very rare for us to launch a project unless at least 80% of the writing is done. Because that really helps prove to the backers that you're committed to this. And so if you have a website where people can go, if it's like your own website or it's an itch.io or something like that, where you have an alpha version, a beta version, a preview of the rules, whatever it is,
Yeah,
that's a great spot. Not only is it great to just show that you're putting in the time, but if you can get people to check out your game and they can give you good feedback, that's another great thing that you can put on your Kickstarter page or your, in general, say, look, I'm not bringing to you the first draft. I've been getting feedback on these rules for 6 months and we've been tweaking things as we go along. And we feel a lot more confident now than we did, when the rules were produced. I don't think you hurt yourself by putting out a rule sheet or a set of rules ahead of time, and even for free if you wanted to.
yeah. Even like when we put out Zoo Mafia's quick start rules, internally they're like, someone was like, "Oh, you're just gonna put this out there for free?" I'm like, "Yeah, because the people that are gonna back your project are gonna back your project. The ones that are like, "Ma, ha, ha, I got it now. I don't have to give you any money." They
They
weren't
weren't
gonna
going to back it. No,
back.
no,
Yeah,
no. You're absolutely right. Now, on the flip side, as I guess the warning to Winter Weaver or whoever is, make sure that what you put out there is as good as you can do in the moment, right? Because you will be judged if you say, "Hey, this is just words. There's no art." That's fine. People are going to accept that. They're going to be cool. But if you're writing, if you're editing, if you're whatever is unpolished to any extent, that is going to reflect on you. They're going to read
yeah,
that and they say, I can't, if they say, I can't understand these rules, or, this is just littered with problems, uh, that could turn people away from your follow-up project. So I would encourage maybe find yourself some buddies, find some friends, find some people in a smaller community that are willing to give first eyes on it
yeah.
and say, yes, this is representing you well. You're not going to turn people off and then open it up to a larger audience. That's probably a safer way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like, I will say, like, if you only have text, when you go to a Kickstarter page, you're going to need art, you're going to need graphics, you're going to need things to make people's, eyes want to stay on your page. And like, yeah, I get it. You're doing the Kickstarter to take care of those expensive things like art, but nobody else cares, right? They want to
No,
be they want to be wowed when they get to the page.
you are absolutely right. Uh, I think well, I could look, but I've probably backed 230 Kickstarters, and I'll tell you, like, my eyes glaze over when I see thick paragraphs of text on a Kickstarter, right? Like, even if you're presenting a huge product, like, give me bullet points and give me art, like, get in, get out.
Yeah,
Make it exciting. It's, the Kickstarter page is like the cover of your book, right? And the back of the book, right? It's all meant to be exciting and engaging and tell me what I'm getting and don't confuse me, don't bore me, right? Um, and like, I don't want, like, even if your book is a cool setting book, I'm holding Planescape, I guess, here, so thinking setting, but like,
mm,
even if you got a cool setting book and it's all about the world, don't give me, you know, a column of text talking about in the beginning of this world, such and such happened, and then this happened, and the gods did this, and like, no, bullet points, cool, dynamic, yelling at me sentences that I can engage with and that capture the imagination of your world or the vision of your world, and then save the columns for the book and for the
yeah.
people to settle into their easy chair, pop it open, and experience it all at once.
I feel like that is just writing online in general, right? Like, I always look at it this way. It doesn't matter how long your writing is, your article, your Kickstarter page. If you present it in a way that pulls the reader through it. And what I
Yeah.
mean is, that's like you said, using the bullet points, having the right amounts of white space, using graphics in the right places and the right positions to make people's eyes shift and move, so that
Yeah.
they're not like glazing over. You have to break state and consistently make them jar them a little bit so they stay there and they're awake.
Yes. Uh, you're not gonna make everybody happy, no matter what you put on your page, right? If you listen to me, you're gonna get a message from somebody. Hopefully, it's a private message, but maybe they posted on your Kickstarter and they say, "I would really have appreciated if you would have given me 4 paragraphs of lore on this.
Yeah.
That would have helped sell it." So this is definitely Zach's opinion and not the opinion of the world. But um, so on that respect, like, you know, do what you feel comfortable with, and if what you've got is words, go for it. I can only give you my advice, and you can prove me wrong. Absolutely, there's companies that do every day.
So in the description, there's a link to World of Game Design. The front page is a store, but is there a way to get to a contact page from there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So our store is up. You can check it out. That's the link that we give. That has not only our products on it, but all the client projects that we work on, assuming that they have extra inventory and want us to help them sell it. So that's the link that we share a lot. You can also so the link down there is store.wogd.com. We're also building our own or rebuilding our own core website, which is just wogd.com, right? So just get rid of the store part and you're at our main website. You can reach out to us there. You can also just shoot me an email, which is just my name, Zach at WOGD. And you can reach out to me directly that way. ZAC@WOGD.com. If you go to our main website right now, though, I will forewarn you, there will be there's broken images and whatnot all over, and we're quickly working through that, but not quickly enough for today.
I feel your pain, as I am the webmaster to our own site,
Yeah.
and sometimes writer and editor and everything else under the sun. It can be quite challenging uh, to do. And matter of fact, I think day 2 of Wormfest, which is where we met, um, Ted was talking with the folks over at Exalted Funeral and gave them some good tips and things to do with the website. And I was like, all that is great, Ted. The only problem is now you have to implement it, and that is the more difficult part.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like, and I'll tell you, like, I would love to do some. Obviously, we're working on our website right now. After that, I'm going to be working on our store, giving it a facelift. The nice thing about our store right now is that the product is at least consistent on there, and everything's visible and for sale, and has tech. Like, at least everything's there. It looks great that way. But one thing at a time. We talked earlier. We still are a small company. There's still all of us wear many hats. I've got a great team that juggle a lot individually, but there's only so many things you can juggle at once. So we pick our poison, I guess.
Yes, yes, for sure. Also, you had given me your Facebook contact information.
Hmm.
So is that a good way to reach out to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you guys you can hit me up if you're I don't know. I don't feel like I'm old, but in
Mm.
some ways I'm old, and like I don't do the grams or the Twitter or the
Yeah.
TikTok or anything like that. I'm just on Facebook, and yeah, you're welcome to reach out to me there and friend request me, chat with me, send me a message. Um,
I
happy to
I
chat.
used to be much more into Facebook, but then my account got hacked
Uh,
and banned,
uh,
which I watched in real time, and it took me a long time to even get a new Facebook account. And I'm like, how does this even work? I see people with like 3, 4, 5 Facebook accounts. I can't even get one at this point.
yeah.
Um, and because everything, and then I looked into like what you have to do to get another account. I think like the privacy laws got better, and
Hmm.
that's why I can now have one.
Yeah.
But before then, it was like impossible. Either that or the cookies all expired. But like Facebook has actually turned me off the Facebook, and I hardly go on there anymore. Or any social media for that much, right? So
Hmm.
I don't know. I
I,
guess I just doom scroll on Twitter now instead of Facebook.
yeah, I like the Facebook groups. And so, and
Yeah.
what I guess kind of to give a note there, like I found as a creator that most social media didn't really help me progress, and I didn't do a lot of marketing and things like that. And um, but what I did find is that the smaller groups on Facebook were great communities, just like the community that I liked on Kickstarter. And so I play a lot of different RPG systems. Right now, I'm running a vampire game. I'm running a Simba Room game. I'm running Dungeons and Dragons. I'm playing in 1E second edition, and I'll join all of those groups. And that's where I live on social media, is in those really excited communities that are talking about, different supplements and resources that they're putting together and are answering questions when I have those. Um, that's the space I like to live in on my when I get on social media.
Yeah. So, what was the transition for you from being someone using Kickstarter to, you know, someone who is now helping others on Kickstarter? How did that come about?
Oh, um, so I think the first one was weirdly enough, it's coming for full circle. I think our my first client was a guy named David Barrentine. And I had I have I had a podcast, still have a podcast, but um we had chatted with him. He had put out a product on the DMs Guild that I really liked. It was an adventure, and we were interviewing a few DMs Guild creators at that time on the show. And I really dug it. I thought that he wrote really well, and I still believe David is one of the best adventure writers out there in the 5e space today. Beautiful writing, and so we had kind of stayed in contact after that interview and just kind of hit it off. And he messaged me after our first couple's Kickstarters, and he said, "Hey, I have this campaign that I was going to put on DM's Guild, but maybe that's not the place to do it. What do you think?" And he sent me a level 1 to 20 campaign. Like the full, like how many times have you seen a full level 1 to 20 thing? And it's like gorgeous, and his writing was amazing still, and like it was the full track. And he's like, "Should I put this on the DMs Guild, or should is there a way to do this on Kickstarter?" And I'm like, "Dude, don't put this on the DMs Guild. Like, you like,
For
I
so many
love it
reasons.
for so many reasons, but like why would you put it there? It like you this doesn't have anything to do with the Forgotten Realms or anything. It's just your world, your vision.
Yeah.
Like let's do this." And so it kind of just I stumbled into helping him. He said, "Well, I'll give you a cut if you'll help me do my Kickstarter." And so I did, and it went really well. And we made that book. It's called Knights of the Shadow Realms.
Yeah, that was a really long explanation to say money.
Money. That's right. But no, the great thing about that was that I
Yeah.
got to dip my toe in to that consultation or the helping with a friend and
Yeah.
helping them. And we got to learn a lot of mistakes and learn a lot of lessons and get that excitement together. And then it just compounded from there as more people saw that, and we chatted with more creators and more people came to help. And then it kind of really skyrocketed when Zine Quest happened in 2020, and we put out a note like, "Hey, if you are thinking about doing Zine Quest," we put it on a couple of Facebook groups. If you're thinking about doing Zine Quest, but you just want to make the thing and you don't want to run the Kickstarter, reach out to us." And boy, oh boy, have people done that ever since. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been good.
What do you like about doing Kickstarters for other people's projects?
I love the energy of creators. I like to create things, but I think like almost as much as I like creating, I like seeing you excited about the thing that you're making. And so for me, um, uh, getting to sit down and have a chat and hear about like I was just talking to someone the other day, and they're like, "I have this idea for a dungeon world," and pitch. I'm like, "That sounds amazing. I want to play that." And so then it's like, okay, but the reality is that creators are so often really bad at marketing,
Yeah.
really bad at sales, really bad at budgeting, really bad at whatever. Like we're all bad at a billion things. I'm bad at a billion things. But um, if
Traditionally,
you
gamers are terrible business people, in my
right,
opinion.
right, Right. And so it's like, all right, well, I love your thing and I want it to be successful. So like, how can I help you be successful? And so like one of the first things that I do, and I like doing this sort of thing, is I sit down, I hear all their ideas, and I go away and I make a spreadsheet budget for them. And I say, here's what you can do. Here's what this is going to cost. Here's what this is going to cost. Here's how much you're going to have to make on Kickstarter. Here's how many followers. And like I say, like I can help you do all this, but I want you to see like this is what this project looks like for
Uh,
success so that you're not ending up, $5,000 in debt, even though you did $20,000 on the Kickstarter. Um, and I like doing that. I like sitting down and talking about like what's some really cool stretch goals that aren't going to hurt you, but that are actually going to build excitement. What do reward tiers look like? Here's some ideas that I've seen in backing a million projects. I've seen some really cool like, oh, this Kickstarter did a box set, but then they also offered this tier and this tier. What if we did something like that? Like it's puzzle solving, right?
yeah.
And I love that side of it, and I like the feeling of looking back and saying like that project got made at least in part because I helped.
Yeah.
And it's cool to like look on my shelf or look at our web store or whatnot and see 40 books now, and I can look at every single one of them and say like I had a little finger in each one of those pies, and that makes me feel good. So,
That's a lot like why I like doing live chats with different people, just hearing what they're passionate about. And oftentimes like, I think it was Don't Stop Thinking, his YouTube channel. I had him on, and he had like a rat in the background, like in a cage. And like
uh-huh.
I think that took over much of the conversation, just
Uh-huh.
because like I've had pet rats in the past, and also it's like if I bring someone on and they have like an interesting hobby or cool something that has nothing to do with gaming, I might not talk about gaming at all. Like Holly Conrad
Yeah.
rescues pigeons and keeps pigeons,
Whoa.
and I'm like, I'm not talking about D&D and cosplay. I'm talking about that stuff all the time. Let me hear about these pigeons. Let me hear about your one-legged chicken. So
No, yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would if there was somebody that had a rat in a cage behind them, I that would be my day right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Sign me up.
I think we had Prodon from WebDM, and like, I guess like he's like a black belt in Taekwondo or something. So he started talking. So we talked about martial arts for a while. But like, just anything that people are excited to talk about and passionate about, is always fun. The worst thing when I'm doing this and someone has things that they're doing, but they don't seem to really care to talk about them. And you gotta
Mm,
like sometimes like people are a little bit more introverted too, right? And it's
yeah.
not it's not a knock against those people. They like just some
No.
people can get on here and talk about their thing much better than others, but we don't have to pull it out and ask a bunch of questions. I just want to beat my head against this desk until it bleeds.
Listen, I will talk like I love talking about Kickstarters. I love talking RPGs. I love talking like gosh, like I'm fortunate that I like doing that side of things too. It does get in the way of my creativity sometimes, right? Like I don't write as much as I used to because I'm doing a lot of Kickstarter stuff, but I love that side of it. And there's, you know, we I want us to be a very supportive community, and I
Yeah,
want people that have an idea or want to be creative to feel like there are people out there, whether we get compensated for it or not, whether we're a partner with you or not, but just that want to support you and want to throw money at your ideas until they're successful to some extent. And uh, because of that, I don't know. I just there's a lot of energy that comes from my job, and it's a great thing to talk about.
let's pick on a friend of ours a little bit in one of their projects. So Brian Cullen is a buddy of ours, and he did Vast Grim, and
Yeah,
his actual best crowdfunding project that he's done to date is that, and he did it on GameFound,
yeah.
and it was like the first TTRPG over there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you think that would have did a lot better on Kickstarter?
100%. That how real do we want to get on this chat, Dave?
I think we can get real. Brian's a good sport and
Oh,
a good
I'm
friend.
yeah. It's not going to be anything against Brian at all.
Uh,
Vastgrim, or not Vastgrim, GameFound is a place that companies should go when they have their own audience.
Mm,
It is not a place that you should go and try to pull an audience into. And that is the harsh fact, is that you are losing money by going to GameFound over Kickstarter. You're losing money if you go to Indiegogo. You're losing money if you go to any other place besides Kickstarter. Kickstarter, like you said earlier, has natural traffic. Believe it or not, it actually does.
yeah.
Now, when you're a big company like Free League or Modifius or board game entities like CMON or things like that, you can take your audience over to GameFound, get a great deal. GameFound will work with you. They'll support you and help with marketing and yada yada yada. I don't know the ins and outs of that, so don't go to GameFound and say Zach said you're gonna take.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
but
gonna clip this part out and be
that's
like,
right. No, but they are more hands on with their people. That's part of their selling point. The flip side of that is that they don't have the natural traffic.
yeah.
I had the wonderful opportunity to work with Modifius on their Skyrim adventure board game. I did Kickstarter consultation for them over on GameFound, and had a blast. Those are super nice guys. But they could have done better on Kickstarter, and they knew it. Brian would say the same thing. So it's a matter of you have to bring your own traffic, and I just think, especially Brian, amazing as that book is, I love Vastgrim, I love his stuff. He doesn't have an enormous audience, so I think he would have done better on Kickstarter.
Yeah, and it's like it's also cool that he did so well, but it's unfortunate maybe he could have did better. If you had to estimate, how much better do you think a project like that would do on Kickstarter as opposed to another crowdfunding place
I would say
platform?
even a successful project loses at least 25% of its sales if they go off Kickstarter. Even like,
Yeah,
even this is Zach's opinion, not opinion of something else.
yeah,
But if Free League or Modifius or somebody goes to GameFound, they are losing 25% of their audience. And for the smaller guys, if this is your first time project, you're probably losing 95% of your audience by going to somewhere else.
yeah,
Look at the average funding on a project, an RPG project on Indiegogo. Like if you're not, a company that's already established, that doesn't already have an email list and a fan base, like those projects make nothing. And there's some really cool stuff that's happening over there with some cool projects, but they're not making what they could have made elsewhere.
yeah. It's unfortunate too because literally our last Kickstarter, there are people who are like, "I wish you the best luck, but I can't support any project that's on Kickstarter at this time," and
Yeah. I
it
think
hurts a little bit, but not enough to go someplace else.
I, and I have nothing against those folks, right? Like that's definitely fair. Like you can definitely have an opinion that Kickstarter is a frustrating company for several different reasons, right?
Yeah.
I am frustrated with Kickstarter for a few reasons. They're not perfect, absolutely not even close. But um, as imperfect as they are, the reality is they are where the market is right now. And if you are a small company, that is the place you need to go to be the most successful from a monetary perspective. There's many other perspectives that you can take. A great friend of mine, Tony Vacinda, he doesn't do Kickstarter anymore. He does GameFound. He does other things. He's amazing. I fully support all of
Is
his causes and
that's
all of his
one
original.
XP?
One XP, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Um, Good guy. You know, he would be the first to tell you that they leave crowdfunding money on the table every time they go someplace else, but he's chosen to do that, and he has a plan in place for how to make that work in the long run, and I wish him all the best on that.
So Winter Weaver as another question. I think this is a pretty good question. What if we wanted to use GameCrafter to create the books, etc., and Kickstarter to promote it and raise funds? Do the terms allow for that model?
Yep, absolutely. People use Game Crafter a lot on Kickstarter. They use Game Crafter and they use things like print on demand through Drive Through RPG, right? Um, you have to if you use those things, you can do it a couple different ways. The first way that you can do it is say, give me $30 or whatever, I will get all of the Game Crafter items to my house or all the print on demand items to my house, and then I'll ship them to you. Or you can give people print on demand codes and they can go to those stores and order them themselves one at a time. You're welcome to do that. I've definitely done projects like that. Typically, I steer away from Game Crafter and print on demand, not because I think they're very useful.
Yeah.
The my main concern with them is that typically, in order for both the creator and them to make money, it means that the project has to cost more. The product has to cost more, right?
Yeah. I
And
know.
so, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know when we did out of the box, like, one model was one stage of the project was okay, it just barely funds, and we're going to be doing print on demand via,
Yeah,
I forget the name of the company that One Bookshelf uses.
Lightning. Yeah,
Yeah,
Lightning resources.
yeah, and we're just gonna do that, But then, like, you get to a certain point, and you're like, hey, like originally we were going to print in the U.S. as well, but then it was like during COVID and everything, and I reached out to the company that was going to do it, and they're like, the latest we're gonna start is July, and my brain flipped that to that's the earliest they're going to start,
Oh yeah,
and so I'm like, you know what? At that point, we might as well just go overseas, and thank God we did because there were unexpected costs that came up that printing in the U.S. would have cost an extra 20 grand, which covered some of those shortfalls and helped us a lot. And then on top of that, I don't know why, but like we shipped like 7,000 books from China, and it was only like $600 the
oh
shipping.
yeah, yeah,
But now we're doing this project, a much smaller project, and the shipping from from China to the U.S. is 4 times that amount.
yeah. It'll make your eyes, ears, and nose bleed when you see
Yeah.
when you see shipping costs right now. Oh my gosh, brutal. Yeah.
But it's the difference between like charging like $50 for a product or 100, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's
We uh I won't name names here, but I've worked with some folks that have done the print on demand angle, and they have to fight an uphill battle of justifying prices
mhm.
that I don't want to have to fight on a regular basis. I
Yeah.
have, that we already have to do that to some extent, but when you sell a book for you sell a discount code or a print on demand code on your Kickstarter for $20 or $40 or whatever it is, or $10, and people feel like they're getting a deal, and then they go to drive through 6 months later to get their print on demand, and it's another $60 for the book or another $35 or whatever if it's a hardcover, yada yada, right?
Mm.
And that's a hard pill to swallow, right? They're like, my final cost on this book is $80. And
There's
you're like,
certain things that people say they care about until you ask them to pull out their wallet.
yeah, exactly. And
That's when the rubber hits the road.
exactly. And the reality is that, like, I want this hobby to be affordable and I want people to be able to buy the stuff. And if I'm going to charge $80 for a book, I would rather get the majority of that and get to pay out, creators than handing it to a print on demand company. And so by and large, what we do is we commit to print runs
Yeah.
for all of our projects, because that puts in the long-term scheme of things, it puts more money in our pocket, which means we can afford to pay more people, hire more people, give money to creators, as opposed to asking our clients or our customers to pay a print warehouse extra.
Crowdfunding is twofold, right? And I kind of like just figured this out on my own before ever doing any of it, right? One is you're backing the project and to help get that project made, but also you're also helping fund the company forward.
Yep.
Like I think I heard Shannon Germain in a panel talk about you're not really backing the project we're doing now. You're backing like the next one, or you're funding our company so that we can go forward. Like Monty Cook Games, like we've had conversations with Monty Cook, and there's recordings of him on here someplace, where basically like he wanted the old school bullpen, And that's what this Kickstarter is kind of fun. Like they get there by having 3 or 4 Kickstarters a year that do $250,000, and they can
Yeah.
have an old school bullpen
Yeah.
and company, but that's the only reason why they can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You're definitely helping, like funding a creator, funding a company on Kickstarter, or whatnot, definitely helps like keep the lights on and, give out consistent salaries and all of that.
Ugh.
Red Jackal, if you don't mind me calling on chat here, Red
Yeah.
Jackal is asking if it's better to go self-publishing or trying to get published through a firm. I think that's a great question. I think that this is going to be a non-answer at the beginning. I apologize, but it probably depends on your project, right? Um, uh, if you have an idea for something that pertains to, you just mentioned Monte Cook, right? If you have an
Yeah.
idea for Numenera, I don't know what the process is. Probably Monte Cook Publishing has directions for how to submit something. But if you want to publish Numenera, you need to go submit to them, right? You're not going to self-publish that. So licensing may get in the way of what you want. Um, if you just but if you, let's say you have a 5e thing and it's an adventure and you're like, do I self-publish it or do I take it to a firm? If you've got some firms that you really think are cool and interesting and you got some connections, pitch it to them. I don't think that's, it's going to take some of the load off your back if you pitch your
Yeah.
game to some Frog God or whoever it is, your adventure, and they're like, yeah, we'll buy it from you and we'll do the work. Great. Like, you're not gonna, like, that's a huge load off your shoulders to get and still getting your project out there.
There's other benefits to that too, like not necessarily for crowdfunding, but it like D&D Beyond exists because Adam Bradford was hired for Curse to do a job, not D&D Beyond, and he pitched them D&D Beyond and sold them
Yeah.
on it. And look what that is now,
Yeah.
right? So that was a non thing. And then even like on a smaller scale, Brian Colin was hired by um um
Infinite Black.
Infinite Black, thank you,
Yeah.
to do a specific job. And he's like, hey, I know you guys want to move more into the TTRPG space as far as creating books and games. I got an idea. And he pitched it to them. And now, like, his title has totally shifted. And he's
Yeah.
in charge of, like, their in house TTRPG publication, game creation, whatever. So, like, there's definitely avenues there if you can provide value and kind of like prove your worth.
Yeah. So I completely agree. So pitching, I don't think is a bad thing. I absolutely don't think it's a bad thing. But you got to understand, you got to keep in mind that, like, for every pitch that gets approved, there's 100 that don't, right? And
Yes.
so you may say, I'm going to pitch this for 3 months or 6 months or a year, but then at some point, if your goal is to see your thing in print, it may be the time to pull that ripcord and go to self-publishing. Or if you imagine yourself 5 years down the road, if what your goal is to have your own print publishing company, you want to be calling the shots, then that's your answer right there, right? If you don't want to be told what to write, if you want to be making those decisions, then that is a self-publishing angle. Even if you get Brian gets accepted at Infinite Black,
Mm.
um, if you get accepted, your pitch gets accepted somewhere and they buy into it, well, now they're largely in charge of that line. Brian, I think, gets lucky in that he still gets to call shots there with Vast Grim to some extent, but a lot of people don't. And
Yeah.
so if that turns you off to think that, like, I'm going to write this adventure, but then if Monty Cook accepts it or Vast Grim accepts it or whatever, I'm going to then the next adventure is probably going to be something that they come to me and say, we want you to write this.
You have to ask yourself, do you at the end of the day, do you want to be assimilated into the Borg?
Yeah, that's right.
If the
Exactly
answer
right.
is
Yeah,
yes, then shoot your shot.
exactly right.
There's a couple questions I want to get to real quick if you got the
Sure.
time.
Sure. Yeah.
This one seems to be simple, yes or no. Winter Weave, do you guys help out with printing and shipping also?
Yes. So what we do on the printing side, we don't have like an in-house printer. What we do is we'll help you find a printer and kind of help make those connections. That's part of what we can do. The other, as far as the shipping, we absolutely do that. We have a warehouse in Indiana. Our warehouse guy, his name's Uncle Troy. He's a delight, and he does a great job.
I'm just
So
envisioning like Duck Dynasty, but with RPGs. I don't know.
Uh,
and
he would be a
and
he
less
would
money.
his chest would probably rise in indignation at that idea. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's got a fine gray long beard.
Oh yeah,
And uh, so on that side of things, we try to not just be a fulfillment center, right? So when things go to Troy's warehouse, one of the things that we talk about with our clients there is, why don't you order 100 extra books, 200 books, 400 extra books, and ship them to Troy, and we'll help you sell them, because we go to a bunch of conventions and we have a web store and we have, half a dozen different ways of getting your books in front of people. And my belief is that if you're going to be successful long term in this industry, you got to have a long term vision. And you gotta invest for the long term, and that means not make if you sell 100 books on Kickstarter, you're not making 100 books, you're making 400 bucks, and now you got to sell those 300, and we want to help do that. So
funny story.
yeah.
In the project that we're you about to deliver on right now, literally it was like $50 to $70 more expensive to print 250 less box sets. So it was
Mm,
kind of like a no brainer, right? It's
yeah.
like it's actually more cost effective just to print the extra.
Yes, exactly right. Like, you get your per unit cost down, right? And so then, but then the key is, and I learned this the hard way. This is a lesson learned, right? If you don't have a place to get rid of books, they just pile up in your back closets and in your
Yeah,
office spaces, and they don't move by themselves, right? So we want to help creators,
you
clients
need
that
the
we work with.
infrastructure.
Yes, we want to help you move through things to make it make sense to buy those extra. Because if it's just you and you don't want to muck with marketing and building a website and blah, 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 going to conventions, you're not going to move those extra quantity, even if it's only $70. Now,
Yeah.
70, that's a great deal for 250 extra quantity. But at the end of the day, you have to look at it and say, it's a great deal, but can I move them? And if the answer is no, shouldn't do it, right?
That is a very good point. Maybe I should have talked to you beforehand. But we're going to find out. I mean,
That's right.
we have a
Absolutely.
website. We already have a physical
Be
product we're
fine.
selling. So I
Yeah.
don't know if we have
Yeah.
two. Maybe it's worth having a booth now someplace.
Yeah.
So Brian Smith, any tips on selling smaller projects, zine level, or self-made art assets? Nothing Kickstarter worthy, but try to get involved in creating and sharing. I
Yeah.
mean, just before you even answer, I would say whether or not it's Kickstarter worthy, it might be Kickstarter worthy because I've seen Kickstarter projects do really well that I do not think were worthy. So
Yes. Oh, great statement, Dave. Um, that was exactly where I was going to go. Is, well, Kickstarter worthy can mean a lot of different things. There's a great creator out of Mexico that his name's escaping me at the moment, but he does like a note card art encounter like
mhm.
once a month on Kickstarter, and he has a cool banner with a art piece, not even cover art, right? And then
Not
he has
Elven Tower, is it?
No, it's not Elven Tower, but Elven Tower is another great example.
Uh,
But he does like two paragraphs of text, right, for his Kickstarter page. He has What he's done is he's designed typically a dungeon. On one side, it's a map. On the flip side, it's all the little notes for the 6 rooms of the dungeon.
uh,
Um, it's all digital. He does launches that once a month. You can either buy just that product, or you can buy that plus his back catalog of other note card RPGs.
yeah.
It's like $1 for the one, or it's like whatever, $12 or whatever for the whole kit. He does very well. And by very well, I feel like he does like $1,000 or so pretty consistently on it. That's ridiculous. That's great money for what
And
he's doing.
eventually he can compile it all and do a print run and probably make a fortune.
Exactly right. So as far as that goes, I'd say there's no such thing necessarily as too small for a Kickstarter, but
Yeah.
just scale the presentation to match. Still present well, but don't
Yeah,
worry
yeah.
about having
When
a
we're
huge
off there,
page.
I'll tell you about the Kickstarter that really annoyed me the most.
Oh yeah.
I won't.
Well,
I won't name and shame on live.
yeah, that's good. But let me address the idea that maybe you don't want to do a Kickstarter for
Okay.
whatever reason. So if Brian, if you don't want to, there's a steady community building on itch.io for that sort of a thing. Um, There's communities there that are, it used to be more of a video game central, but there's now a big TTRPG company.
We're taking over everywhere. We're coming for
That's
you,
right.
video games.
Exactly right. No, we're that's a fool's dream. Um, but that's a good spot if you have small things and you want to pitch. Put up some stuff there. Put your stuff on Drive-Through RPG. Don't expect to get sales directly off Drive-Through RPG unless you're pushing it, but just put it on there because it's really easy for people to buy it off there. They're very most of our community is comfortable with buying things on Drive-Through. A lot of people are comfortable with buying on Itch. And then I think honestly, like the best thing you can do at that point, if you're just trying to like get interest, get a market, is like I said earlier, find some smaller communities on Discord or Reddit or Facebook or wherever you like to hang out, and just kind of saturate yourself. Find some creator spaces and share the progress of developing your small content. And if people think it's cool or interesting, drop them a link, and that's a great way to do it. And kind of a trickle feed, building up a community by being involved in spaces like that. But yeah, a freaking 10-day, 14-day tiny Kickstarter, you can bang that out super fast. And as long as you put in time and you're producing quality work, eventually I think, just like the fellow that I can't think of the name of, you can make a sizable amount for your small projects.
Yeah, I bet if you type in Kickstarter index card adventures, something would come up. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
There's also just a lot of folks on Kickstarter right now that are doing like an adventure every month or 2 months on the thing. We're doing that to some extent. And it's $2 or $3 for a full adventure, just digital. Like, that works. Definitely possible.
So with that, we're past the time. I don't want to hold you hostage any
Hey,
longer.
good.
I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us, Zach. And there's like I've got tons more questions I could ask, and
Oh,
people are chiming in. But perhaps we'll have to have you back for a part
sure.
two. I love talking about this stuff, and apparently we've got some people that have questions. So thank you for coming on to help answer them.
Yeah.
Final thoughts before we head out.
Yeah, well, let me throw a couple places people can go. I kind of mentioned a few of them earlier on, but we have a long-standing podcast that's been live for several years now. It's also streams on YouTube and Twitch. It's called Geeks Can't, Geeks, Geeks Can't, CANT. And we'd love to have you and all your audience hanging out with us there. Basically, typically twice a week we get on stream, talk about RPG topics, talk about Kickstarters, a lot of the same types of conversations that we had today. But it's a really good space, and we really like doing it. You can also, like we talked about earlier, go to World of Game Design, visit our web store at store.wogd.com, or go to our in progress web store or website at wogd.com. And then finally, I said we're going to come full circle. So you talked about the first Kickstarter client that I helped, and we talked about David Barentine. He's actually got his newest project is live right now on Kickstarter. We're helping him. So if you want to see uh, Zach's consultation work and
Yeah.
a client project being successful in action, you could go see all that. It's called Gribble's Guide to the Academic Adventurer. And this is David's baby. He's doing a great job with it, and I'm just excited to get to help him out.
Sweet. Go check that out, guys. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Thanks, Dave.